Hey, everybody, Mike Donahue here with Brian May and special guest,
Very special.
Stevo. Yeah, he's
Special, all
special,
right.
all right. We are here I'm in Nebraska, in the middle of Nebraska. Brian's out in Omaha. And Steve, where you at right now?
I'm in Seattle area.
Wow.
Wow.
I love Seattle.
Me too.
Steve's been a longtime friend. We've had him on the podcast before. Love having him on. We've been doing a lot lately. Brian and I have been talking a lot about the Firefly report on Mike Bickle and just kind of riffing on, that report and some of the things that are disturbing about what happened down there and how it parallels into, church life. Steve was a Assemblies of God pastor, has his credentials. Do you still have your credentials?
I still do. I keep
Has
waiting for them to revoke them, but I still have them.
Try
wow.
harder.
I figure it'll happen naturally. I don't even have to try.
Well, it hasn't happened now. I don't, because you're crazy.
I know. I know. They
Steve,
just don't let me speak anywhere. They don't revoke me, but they just don't poke the bear, I guess.
keep him on the books. Well, Steve's like I said, went through North Central Bible College, was has his degree, and but got out of the ministry after a while. Saw some of the flaws and how the sausage was made, and so Steve's a great resource. I say this all the time to Steve. Steve and I are really good friends, and I say this to him all the time. 30 years ago, Steve was talking about this deconstruction stuff. I mean, for real, he was talking to me about it, and I was dragging my feet because I thought he was just wild and crazy. I'm like,
That was
Steve's out
quite the
there.
discussion. I remember those discussions. You were dragging your feet. You thought I was a
Yeah.
heretic.
I was like, Steve, are you serious? But now what's happening? It basically the world's caught up to Steve, and he really is a leading expert on church deconstruction, or just the idea that the institution is really not what we should worship. And we saw it, we saw it from the very beginning. I saw it, when I was working with Jeannie in Bellevue and in Rockford. Brian saw it too as a teacher, and we got to see how the institution chokes the life out of people. But Steve's done a lot of research and speaking on this subject, and he's actually putting a book out right now. We talked about it last time, but he's really progressing. He sends me the chapters and I read them, and they're fantastic. He's just a great communicator, and really funny, and has a weird way of looking at life. He just comes backdoor at stuff, and like the first part of the chapters, you're like, where's he going with this? Then all of a sudden you're like, oh gosh, like he just hit you. And so one of the chapters that he wrote sent me, I wanted to discuss it. Steve, what's the name of the chapter? Do you have a name for the chapter yet?
I believe it's called Varsity Pizza. It was I don't do well writing from home. Mike, you can. I can't. I'm an environment guy. I'll eat subpar food if the restaurant has a cool vibe about it, right? So when I try to write from home, I just get sidetracked. I don't know about you, Brian, but I just can't do it when I'm sitting behind my computer. But if I go someplace, the environment, well, I was on my way to this place about an hour away, and it's called Varsity Pizza. I love it. It's one of my favorite, and they had a great lunch special. And I was on my way there. What should I write about? What should I write about? And God's like, that. See, that's one of the reasons why. I mean, when I speak, I always try to tie into where we're at. That's what Jesus did when he walked the earth, right? We think that he invented all these parables up in heaven with God the Father before he came down to earth, so then he could tell us the kingdom of heaven is like a field. But I think he's looking at the field when he says, "Hey, it's like this field, or it's like this road you're looking at, or it's like, I think God wants to, in all your ways, acknowledge him. Jesus saw his father, and only did what he saw his father doing, but he saw his father in everything that he did. So I've always tried to live my life that way. Like everything is connected. Everything that happens physically is connected to things that happen spiritually. And so I'm sitting there at a pizza joint, and I'm like, what should I write on? What should I write on the whole way there? What should I write on? All of a sudden, God's like, why don't you write about pizza? And I was like, and then I remembered one of my favorite illustrations that I used to use when I would speak places, and that's what I wrote the chapter on.
And which is the whole idea that the pizza is the essence of what we want, God, but we get enamored sometimes with the box or the delivery boy
Yeah.
or whatever.
Yeah,
The
when I would
mechanism.
speak, right, exactly. And when I would speak at camps, a lot of times I'd speak to youth, particularly if it was adults, I would use a fork and a steak as an illustration. But when I talk to most people, I'd use a pizza. And while I'm speaking, we've all done this, but the delivery guy comes and brings a pizza box to me, and all the students, and they want that pizza so bad. And it's just a pizza. You pay $10 for it, but it would have been worth $1,000. People were offering hundreds of dollars to buy the pizza. And as I pulled it out, and I would just go on about the pizza, and then I ended up talking about the box instead. I said, but forget the pizza. Look at this box. Look at the artwork on this box. I would lick the box. I would be like, oh man, this tastes like cardboard. And and I would just do the whole thing. And when I took the pizza, Brian, and I would dump it in the trash can, they went ballistic. Like, how dare you throw away pizza? I'm like, forget the pizza. Look at this box. And that's what we've made it about God. Religion is man's box to put God in, right? But I don't care how I get God. God has been so amazing to me. He is so loving. He is so patient with me. I'm such a jerk. I blow it so many times, and yet God is always there loving on me. I would tell the student, if I have to lick the side of my house, if I have to go out and stand on my head for an hour, whatever I have to do to get that pizza, to get that God, to get that presence, to get that peace, to get that hope, I'm going to do whatever I have to do. So in other words, I don't care what the box looks like. I don't care anything about the box. Just get me the pizza. And oftentimes we trade the pizza for the box. And that's what religion does. It makes it all about the box, the size of the ministry, the beauty of the building, all these different things. And we're missing the whole point. I don't care what the box is. I just want the pizza.
Reminds me of Jesus' encounter with the Pharisees when he called them whitewashed walls and empty sepulchres, right? Because
Nice
that's what he was
boxes.
talking about. He was talking about, you got all the veneer and crap on the outside, but you're empty,
Yeah.
and that's what's become of our institutions. We've really, in my opinion, I think Steve, we're in line on this, that the church has, forgotten about the ultimate object of their faith.
No, I echo that, and I just think that this podcast we tend to really examine that a lot, but we examine it from we're kind of like at least I'll just speak for myself. We get hammer the box. The whole box idea makes me angry, right?
Yeah.
Because we have that. We've turned this into it being about the box, and
Yeah.
again, you're so funny and you're so witty about how you look at it. I love that licking the box. I could just see you on stage. I've seen you speak a million times. You're a great communicator, and
Thanks, man.
I mean I could just see you up there licking the box and not caring that they were getting mad. And but that's
I
that.
would
And
take
then
a bite
throwing
out
the
of the,
pizza away. That's brilliant. Throw it away. Like that's what we
right,
do. We throw God away.
right.
We throw the essence of who He is away
We do.
because
We
we're
do.
in
We
love
make
with
it
the
about the
box.
stupid box, and it doesn't make sense. But
Yeah.
when you use an illustration like that, then that's why everything is connected. That's why, I mean, when you use an illustration like that, and that's what God did. Jesus spoke in parables. They're religious ways of saying stories. He always a storyteller. I had a pastor tell me that before. Oh, you're just a storyteller. I'm like, thanks. That's exactly what I am. And we want to make it so religious. We want to make it so spiritual sounding. We still speak in Old English because somehow we think that's the language that Jesus spoke, even though it was 1,600 years after he was dead, right? So, I mean, when a picture says 1,000 words, so I'm like, instead of saying 1,000 words, I'm just going to paint a picture with my words. However, Mike, you know me well enough. I'll use 1,000 words. So I do both. I do say 1,000 words and paint the picture, but pictures say it all, And with what you guys have been talking about, I love what you're talking about. I love how you're exposing this stuff. It's not fun to expose this stuff, right? But sometimes we make this all about the box, the person that was sharing what they're sharing. So when you guys share some of this stuff, people oftentimes, I would imagine, right? Well, I know I've been in this thing long enough. They want to show up and they want to defend the person that they feel like you're attacking. And I don't know if you're attacking the person as much as you're attacking the action. You're attacking the flaw. You're attacking what they did to hurt other people. And no one ever pays attention to the other people that were hurt by it. But in other words, the ends justify the means, right? As
Right.
long as they deliver. I mean, we've all seen people get away with stuff speaking at events, at church events, but their character just sucks. And the Bible talks about the fruit of the Spirit. You know a tree by its fruit, by how peaceful they are, how patient they are, how kind they are, gentle they are, all these things, how full of faith they are. But we've made it a business. We've turned it into a business, and it's all about the kind of numbers we get in. And it goes in the business world. CEOs that as long as they perform, As long as they keep that bottom line healthy, they get away with garbage. And that's why we can act like a bunch of jerks out there, and we got to stop it. That the person that shared that with you, what they shared with you is a pizza. Stop confusing them for the pizza. They're just human. We're all flawed. We all make mistakes. The problem is, I'm sorry, I'm going too long here, but the problem is when we don't own up to our mistakes. If I don't do with my luggage, then I'm going to pass on my luggage to somebody else, and that's where people get hurt. And the thing that I have in this whole thing is the people that are doing stuff like this, yeah, they're changing people's lives, but let's talk about the unnoticed people that don't have the numbers, that don't have a ministry, that are just a regular student that got abused. What about that 12-year-old girl that, what's his name? I mean,
Robert Morris.
what about these people? Then that's what you guys are doing. You are standing up for those people, and that's what Jesus did, and that's why the religious leaders, one of the reasons why they didn't like him, because he stood up for the people that weren't important.
Yeah, I had a conversation. You and I talked about this. And Brian, you did too. I had a conversation with a friend of mine who I really respect a lot. He's been good to me. He's been very good to me. I'm not going to mention his name here, but we were talking about the Genie stuff. He knows her really well. He worked with her a little bit, and he goes, Mike, I started to tell him some information that I had, and he stopped. He said, don't burst my bubble. He said, can you just let me have my relationship with her, the way it is? I just want to have a memory of her that's not corrupted. And I went, well, how convenient for you. I got upset with him a little bit, and I wrote him a letter and email and apologized for being so strong. But I basically said to him, you know what, that's selfishness, right? I mean, yes, I get the fact that God used her in my life, but I think it has a lot more to do with the fact that I was in a position to hear what was going on, in my life, because I was broken. I needed God, and she was speaking the word of God at that time, and her character was in question. There was people at that time in the 80s when I was being blessed by her ministry. She was also at the same time, I didn't know this till later, being called out for things that I didn't know about as the hearer. I walked into this sanctuary, listened to this person talk about the word of God. My heart was ready to hear it. I got blessed by it. I have no problem saying that Jeannie Mayo was used of God in my life. But just like what you just said, there are people on the other side of that, not just her, but all over the planet that are being, yes, God uses those people because they're speaking his word. His word's powerful. It's going to do its work, right? But at the same time, there are corrupt things, and they need to be dealt with. They need to be dealt with. And because there are other people on the other side of that are not getting blessed or getting the opposite of that. They're getting hurt by the duplicity and the confusion that comes with, wait, she's a superstar. Like we've turned, I wrote this down when you were talking. We've turned those boxes into like the Hall of Fame. We have Hall of Fame boxes,
Wow.
right?
Wow.
We've got Jeannie Mayo as a Hall of Fame. She's in the Hall of Fame, and Robert Morris and all these people until they fell, they were in the Hall of Fame. And now they're like those guys that, that never made the Hall of Fame because they did steroids, right? Because there's an asterisk. There's an asterisk next to their name. And that's what's so hard about this, is that, yes, I loved watching Sammy Sosa, and I loved watching Barry Bonds and Mark McGuire, and when that was going on. But at the same time, I'm going, wait, there's no way those guys aren't dirty, right?
Right.
That's the confusion that comes. It's like, man, I love watching this. This is amazing. This is cool. But they're cheating, right?
I got
And
a
that's
kick
the feeling I get with her and with
I got
other
a kick
people.
watching Barry Bonds' head grow. That's what I got a kick out of.
Literally.
I went to my college, Christian college. Famous evangelist back in the day, Jimmy Swaggart, went to that school. And I think he blew all. He was at that school too. But anyway, he became rich, famous, and he paid for the skyways to connect all the buildings. It was downtown Minneapolis, and it got cold in the winter, but we never had to go outside if we didn't want to. It was amazing. But the moment that he fell morally, the moment that he was busted for what he did, they had a plaque on the wall saying this is donated by so-and-so. But talk about taking the pizza boxes down. The moment that it went public, what he did, guess what plaque came off the wall? I'm like, did he not still pay for that? So what? He blew it, right? Why are you taking the plaque down? And the other thought I have on that too is that the problem is how we're viewing the pizza boxes. I mean, Jesus didn't go to the ones with the big numbers. He went to the ones that had no numbers. every one of us are just heroes in some way to somebody, but we tend to give the credit for those that have the ability to make something grow, to make something big, to make a big business or whatever. But the people that change our life the most, honestly, are oftentimes people that are invisible. And the people that God notices, the people, listen to me, those of you that are listening right now, I'm talking to you right now. A lot of you are invisible. People don't understand what you do. We say stuff all the time like, if he just knew me, if they just only knew my heart, what I was trying to do. Well, God does. And God does have a wall of fame, and you are on it. And just because other people don't, just because the numbers aren't big, we're putting the wrong boxes on the walls, or
Yeah.
putting them on the walls for the wrong reasons.
Right.
Like you said earlier, when he was around life and you saw life happening, he used those you saw Zacchaeus looking at him from the tree, so he makes it about him that day, right? And it's in the
Yeah.
Bible now about Zacchaeus being the guy that was the chief tax collector, which basically meant back then he was part of the Gambinos, right? It was mafia, right?
Mm.
And
Yeah.
so, yeah, come here, give me your money, that stuff. I mean,
Yeah.
I love that idea that Jesus was walking around looking at the religious brutality that's going on, and he picks a guy like Zacchaeus out and makes him into a hero, right? And goes, I see your heart. I know you're dirty. I know what you're doing. You don't even like doing it. You're just stuck in this weird world that you're in, but there's something better for you. I love that about Jesus. I love that he
me
did
too.
stuff like that.
Me
Found the
too.
woman that was caught in adultery and basically turned her into a hero. And I know your heart. I know you don't want to be doing this. And here's the thing. I'm not judging you. I want you to be better. He did that. I think he did it for her, obviously, but he also did it for the religious system around him to
Right.
watch him do this. And I just can't help but think that there were people like the deconstructionists of the time that were watching that religious stuff and going, I just don't like this because it seems so phony to me. And then here comes Jesus, and he does these crazy things like loving the lowly and pointing out the woman who was given a penny versus the guys that were given hundreds of dollars. And he goes, she's the hero. She's the one that I'm noticing right now. And all those Pharisees, their heads were just blowing up going, this isn't part of the system. This is not what this isn't the way we do things around here, Jesus. We're going to kill you because of this. And they did. They killed him because of that.
Yeah.
And they're still killing Jesus. That religious spirit in the United States of America is still killing Jesus. It's killing them.
Yeah. We talk about this a lot on the podcast about how we measure things by numbers. And I mean, we naturally do that, right? Bigger the better. And that's the way we look at things. If it makes more money, if it has more,
bigger, better, faster, stronger, America.
If it has results that, even though they may not be results that you can see, then we measure that as being successful. And how many times have we seen that? I mean, it happens in the corporate world too. I mean, but it happens. I mean, in the church. Number one of you said a little while ago, it's not a business. It's not a business. I realize that you got to keep the doors open. There's a financial kind of thing going. Now, do you have to keep your, $50,000 doors open? I don't know. If you got a regular door, maybe that you got a Menards on the front of your church, maybe that's some, but that's a whole other conversation. But, but at the end of the day, as I've grown in my spirituality, and I've gone through my deconstruction and reconstruction, I look at a gathering and I say, okay, is this about a person or a group of people, propping themselves up, providing for themselves, whether it's their ego or their pocketbook or that kind of thing? Or are these just a bunch of people trying to help each other get through life?
Right.
And to me, that's kind of what Jesus modeled, right? When I went through my deconstruction, I like to say I didn't throw the baby Jesus out with the bathwater. I threw just about everything else out, but but the idea is that if you go read the Sermon on the Mount, you look at the Sermon on the Mount or the Sermon on the Plain, and you look at those interactions that he had, that should be the model of what we're doing today in the church. And by and large, it's not. And again, to your point, to use your analogy, we just want a bigger and better, pizza box, and we're stuffing a we're stuffing a frozen Totino's inside, and calling
Or
it.
there's nothing inside anymore. right?
Yeah.
Just
Right.
crumbs anymore of experience that they had in the past, but they haven't anything new since.
Right.
Yeah. And Mike, I completely agree with what you said too. Good words, Brian. I mean, 100%. That's why I'm writing this book. It's also why the book isn't even out yet, because the more I write, the more I have inside of me, because I feel the same way. We're getting it all wrong,
Yeah.
right? Jesus showed up to help people, and the people he hung out with, the religious leaders, the important people, the big boxes, they didn't like that at all. And they said, "You're a friend of sinners," right? And he was like, "Yeah, that's right. That's exactly what I am,"
Yeah.
right? The problem is that we have is that when Jeannie shows up with all this power and all this love, it's great. She touches a lot of people. But when she messes up, and we're all going to mess up, but when she doesn't fess up to that fact that she messed up,
Right.
then now people, how they view God, they don't view Jesus as Jesus anymore. They view the Jesus that the religious leader, they viewed the actions of that person, and that pisses me off. It
Yep.
makes me mad, and that's wrong. And
Right.
someone's got to stand up. Jesus showed up and said, "No, you guys are wrong. Here's the most important thing right here. This individual right here." And if people could just know God for who he is, they'd see that he's slow to anger. He's abounding in love. In his presence is fullness of joy. But people aren't getting that when they look at some of our leaders, because our leaders are leading, trying to get the bigger box instead of trying to get a better pizza. And now they've replaced their image of God with that image of that person. And that makes me mad. And I think makes God angry too, because he's like, wait a minute, stop putting words in my mouth. Let me show you what I'm really about.
Right. And I think that's the thing that frustrates me is that we've turned it in, like we've turned it in, Jeannie, or people like her, and even myself when I was a pastor, into, like, we get crazy, like that makes that person kind of nuts. Like when you have to continue to perform and be the show, instead of just letting Jesus work through you.
Right.
When you have to be the center of people's faith, that turns you into a maniac. I mean, I've
Yeah.
seen it over and over, where I watched good people start out, in a good way, where they really were letting God work through them, and then they got some success, and they went, "Ooh, this feels good," and then they got into idolatry, right? They got into worshiping the box, and then went, "Oh, if we make this box a little bit, fancier, we're going to get more accolades." And then the world goes, the Christian world goes, "Yeah, the bigger the better," like you said. And so we get fooled and duped into thinking that is what the fruit of the spirit is.
Right.
And when they started out, they weren't like that. I went to one of you and I, Steve, both went to this conference with Jeannie, her youth conference, and Christina Kane was up there. And I don't know if you remember this, but I turned to you and I said, "That's what Jeannie sounded like when back early, like in Bellevue.
Mm,
There was more
yep.
purity, there was more anointing, there was more uh, humility." And I don't know what's happened to Christina Kane since then. Maybe she got famous too, and now she's off the chart. I don't know. I have no idea. But I believe that people do start out with good motives, and at some point you have to make a choice, right? Do I worship the box, or do I worship the pizza? And
Right.
and so a lot of people go after the box because the box gives you immediate results. You get
Yeah.
immediate gratification when you turn the box into into a show.
I, here's my question. So, we've done a, prolific job of outlining the problem here, right? So if you're just a regular Joe, right, and you're looking for a faith community to help you get along, that you want to be a part of. I mean, Cheryl and I have gone through this. I mean, we've struggled with this. But if you're looking for a faith community, I mean, what is just the regular guy, left to do, or woman? I'm sorry, I don't mean to be so sexist here. Um,
Hey, but they call everyone bro these days. Everyone's bro.
well, they
Male,
do.
female, bro.
Yeah.
So,
So what's a regular bro to do, man?
and that's a great question. That's a question that we should be asking. When that one of the scriptures we used all the time was in Acts chapter 2, was it verse, oh, but it talked about they assembled themselves, the fellowship of the word. In other words, do you guys know what scripture I'm talking about?
Yep.
Yeah.
right? I
Yeah,
never
it was
get the
it was
description of it right, but it
pumped down my
says
throat, so yeah.
they met, right? They met continually, they broke bread, and they talked about the word. Well, the word that they talked about was, there was no, I mean, the disciples who knew Jesus were like, they're the only ones that knew about Jesus. Jesus was gone at this point. So it wasn't a Bible study. It wasn't a freaking Bible study, which oftentimes a Bible study is nothing more than a mini church service. We
Right.
can't get beyond that. The Romans showed up and they, anyway, that's a whole nother topic, right? But in other words, what that scripture is really saying, in fact, when we use a scripture that says in Hebrews, do not forsake the assembling of yourselves together. It's not good. You guys need to meet together. There was no thing called a church when that was written. It's talking about hanging out with each other. COVID comes around and it slows us down. We change our perspectives. We see things from a new, from a new mindset, right? But we want to get back to the old. We want to get back to normal. And all along, God's like, I want you guys to slow down so you can hang out with each other. So, in other words, they couldn't wait to hang out with each other. It wasn't their weekly Bible study. I don't think they had a weekly. We meet at Tuesdays on Jochebed's house, and on Fridays we meet at Joseph's house. And no, they didn't have a thing. We do that in America, right? But they just couldn't wait to meet with each other. And when they met, what do they talk about? They talked about life. And Jesus was always a part of that. The reason why they would talk about the apostles, because the apostles were the ones that had a face-to-face. Peter told me this about Jesus the other day. And so we know how to be friends. We know how to be Christians, but we don't always know how to be Christian friends.
Yeah.
And a Christian friend just helps someone else become a better believer. That's all that they really do. And so
Yeah.
to answer your question, I think we just got to start hanging out with each other, and we've got to start including God in our conversation and start asking the question. Like, here's a question. I'm writing one of my chapters right now. I'm writing is about this. There are two questions. I think that if we ask these two questions when we see each other, instead of saying, hi, how are you doing? I think if we greet each other with these two questions, I think it answers a lot of your question, Brian. I would love to get your input on this before I finish my chapter here. But the first question is, so what's God been telling you lately? Well, that forces me to think about, whenever God reveals something to me, I end up forgetting it. But if I know the next time I see Brian's going to say, what's God been telling you lately? When when God reveals something to me, when I say telling, I mean revealing. He shows something to me. I get this cosmic whatever. I get this truth revealed to me, right? I go, I'm going to remember that because I know Brian's going to ask me. I'm going to see him tomorrow. I know Brian's going to ask me. This is what I'm going to tell him. Now I'm alert to what God is doing in my life. And now we're talking about what God is doing in my life. I'm encouraging you. You're encouraging me. The second question is, and who's God telling you to bless lately? I think if we ask those two questions and answer them on the regular, I think that would answer a situation. I think we start living that way. Right now, we become dependent upon the box. And it's not about the freaking box. It's about Jesus. It's about God. It's about his love. It's about his patience. God came to love people, all people, right? And he came for the sick, not for the healthy. There are no healthy ones. I mean, we're all broken in some way or another. I think that that's the point. We need to want to hang out with each other. And we hang out with each other. He said, in all your ways, acknowledge me, and I'll show you the right way to go. Right. So I think God just needs to be a part of our life. And we cannot wait to meet with each other to talk about what God's been doing in our life, to talk about our favorite team, to talk about what's been going on in life. It doesn't have to a Bible study. We lay everything on the shelf, just like we do with church service. We lay everything at the door and we immerse ourselves in nothing but here's our God time, right? And then we leave that behind. That's the problem with that. Then we leave it behind, go out the door, and then we go live our life. Instead of, wait a minute, how about we just include God in everything that we do, right? We see God like Jesus did. We see him in everything that we see him in the field. We see him in the movie. We see him in the, so to me, that's a long way to answer a very simple question. I just think we got to start hanging out with each other again. And when we hang out with each other again, encourage each other, challenge each other, include God in our conversations. Does that answer your question very well, Brian? Or
Well, it does. And I think that's really good. I think I was just, while we were talking, I was thinking about something you said a while back. You talked about, what are you doing with your luggage? Are you dealing with your luggage or are you just carrying on? And I think
right.
that's another place where I found in my own growth that, being open and being honest and being transparent about those things, saying, you know what, I'm kind of a jerk here. And,
Yeah, 100%.
I mean, there's a reason for that. I'm looking at that. And, um, not feeling condemned and not feeling like I'm, faulted or like I'm some dirty, rotten sinner, but saying, hey, I'm a human being.
Yeah,
I'm walking through this world. And that's a hard thing.
Yeah.
You know,
And
being a human and walking through this world is a hard thing. And then when you're
right.
trying to do it in a way that you know, love your neighbor as you love yourself, that doubles down on the difficulty, right? And that requires work. That requires mindfulness. That requires,
100%.
paying attention. I know a lot of people have complained that a lot of those kinds of things, people are saying, well, yeah, you're being selfish. You're just looking at yourself, and it's like, well, you know what? If myself is broken and, isn't, if I'm living out of a false self, because I've got whatever, rather than living
Yeah.
out of my true self, then, I owe the world, you
Yeah.
know, being, doing that work. I owe that to the world. If I'm going to have if I'm going to be a good human and treat other humans the way they deserve to be treated, then yeah, I need to do that work. So I
That's the
love
whole
you.
idea of exposing the box, is the
Yeah.
false self lives in that box. Like that false self needs that box because it's a cover. The authentic self needs him. Like
Yeah.
we need him to
Yeah.
justify our lives. I need Jesus to justify my life because I am a mess.
Yeah.
But if I'm living this false self, I don't need Jesus. I just need the box. I need that show. I
Yeah.
need that pretension because that covers me.
Right. And you contrast the two things that you guys both said. Mike, you said the Christine Kane and how these people started off and all they cared about was the pizza, right? But then when we buy into this system, there's a lot of pressure to it. There's a lot of pressure to it. And Mike and then Brian, what you said about we just need to be vulnerable and real with each other. We're afraid to do that, but there's freedom in that. Mike, the system that we're talking about with what you were talking about, there's pressure in that, right? There's all this pressure to have to keep our front up, and that's why when remember God had his own system. He showed up with his people, and he led them. He led them, right? But all the other nations around them had a king. They had a person. They had a box, right? They had someone important lead them. And all of God's people said, we want a king because all the other nations have a king. We want to be like them. Romans 12:1 and 2 talks about don't conform. Don't think like everyone else thinks. Think like I want you to think. God's like, I'm your king. I want to be your king. I will guide you. I'm the pizza. No, we want a box, but I'm the pizza. But the box brings a pizza, right? I think one of the reasons why God didn't want to give them a king. He finally gave into them and said, fine, I'll give you a king. And they've been messed up ever since. God said, I want to be your king. And I think one of the reasons why he said he doesn't like the idea of the king is no human can handle the pressure of being king. Only he can. That's why he's the king. That's why he's the king of kings. God can handle that pressure, but that's why I had a buddy of mine years ago when I was telling you about all this stuff. Shortly after that, he said, you're going to see a lot more ministries go down because we can't handle that pressure as a human being. It's very difficult. Very few people can handle that kind of pressure
Right.
and not blow it at some point. The point
Right.
is when you finally do blow it, you got to fess up. You got to get rid of your luggage. You got to, what Brian said, you just have to come real. And Brian, we all know, like when we do that, man, the pressure just leaves. We feel at peace. We're no longer there trying to prove ourselves to people. And
Yep.
that's really how it's supposed to be, is just like, here's where I belong. Maybe that's another question we could ask each other. What are you struggling with lately? Where have you blown it? Let's talk about that. Let me encourage you.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And it goes back to the Hall of Fame thing, with Sosa and all those guys, right? What you talking about, the pressure, those guys felt that pressure and went, I've got to do something to be on top. I got to do something to be on top. And they forgot their passion about baseball. They forgot about the joy of being a baseball player, right? And
Right.
just the pure joy of that. But they became professionals and got
Yep.
more into it and then became cheaters. And that's what you're seeing in the kingdom of God. They're
Yeah.
cheaters. I mean, they just cheat the system, and then put up this front that they've got fruit, and the fruit is their numbers and their power and their influence and their Hall of Fame status. And it's too bad because the normal person, Joe person that's watching it from the outside goes, ugh, I don't know why. I just don't like that. And
Yeah.
and that's why, because they're reading it, they've seen it. This has been really good. Um, Brian, what do you think?
I appreciate you coming back on, Steve, and look forward to next time we have you on. Maybe you'll be have your book released and out by then. I'm pretty fascinated.
I got a lot of stuff in there, man. The more I write, the more I realize I have to write, and I'm really enjoying it. and it's taken a long time to write. But I'm getting all this. It's putting on paper basically a lot of stuff that you guys are talking about. That's what
Yeah,
I'm talking about with you. But finally,
I've been after him for
you have.
how long have I been after you?
I've been talking about writing a book for almost 3 decades.
Yeah.
I was going
And
to
I
write
was
the
like, this
accident
last
driven
couple of
life.
years, I'm like, Steve, I'm gonna beat you up if you don't write this book.
But you know
Like,
what changed it for me? And this goes back to the answer your question that you asked a bit ago, Brian. Like, how is it supposed to look like?
Right.
He's been encouraging me for years, but it's still like he could not. I just wasn't going anywhere. So Mike took it to the next level, and he said, "I'm going to help you do it.
Yeah.
I've got the summer off because I speak at schools, and I'm going to challenge you." And Mike knows how I function, so Mike handles me different than he handles other people. Mike's a Southie from Boston, right? And he's that old fighter, that old, I'm talking over here. I had a lot of very strong, I shouldn't say strong, D's, the personality, I call them drill sergeants, but I've had some unhealthy, strong leaders in my life so whenever that people get like that, I tend to back up, right? And Mike's used to, because Mike's a fighter. That's why I like him on my team, right? And he's fought for me a lot, but Mike knows how to handle me. And Mike knew I needed someone to not just say something, like we all say something, right? But Mike decided to do something, and he put several things into practice. And now that I'm going, I don't even need him to help me do those things anymore because I'm
yes, you
loving
do.
what I'm doing. And that's the thing, is like we should be helping each other. It's supposed to be a team.
Yeah.
But the pressure of I have to be the box, I have to be the person, I have to, and we did it to Barry Bonds. We did it to Jeannie Mayo, right? We give them the credit and the kudos because of their numbers, right? We are enamored when someone famous walks in, instead of being enamored because a human walks in, a human with a lot of potential. And so in a lot of ways, we've created a system that praises, that highlights people with the numbers, and then so other people buy into that.
Yeah.
And then once you buy into it, it's a catch-22.
It
It's a
feeds
snowball
itself.
going
It
down the
just
hill.
it's a
Yeah.
vicious cycle.
And at one point, you know how to stop it, right?
Right.
But at some point, you have to stop it, and you have to get real, and you have to say, "Excuse me, I'm wrong. I
Yeah.
blew it, and I'm sorry. I hurt you." And Mike, you've done that, and it's in your book behind you there, Groomed. You've done that in your book. You talk about how you've apologized to people that have hurt you, and that continues to answer the question that Brian asked. Such a great question to ask. What's it supposed to look like? And we've made
Yeah.
it all about, well, I got to go to church, and I
I
can't
was
swear.
at a funeral Brian and I were both at this funeral a couple days ago, and there was a girl there that was in my ministry, and I know that the system, I didn't directly have a lot to do with her, but I know the system that I put together hurt her, and I looked her right in the face and said, we were wrong, and she said this. She said, when I was being pursued by all you guys at the beginning, she goes, I felt so good. I felt like God's love
Right.
was so there. But
Yeah.
she said this. She goes, as soon as I got into leadership, that's when it all changed, because now, it was about the box. She didn't say that, but that's really what it was about. It was about the numbers. Now she had to produce. Now she was on the team. Now she had to go out and get people and recruit people. And that's the system that we put in place. And I'm part of that. I'll admit it. I did that. And I was trying to change it. And I think by the time I was done there, I tried to change it the best I could. That's one of the reasons why I think I wore my time out there. They were done with me because I was talking crazy talk. Like I was talking like, hey, let's worship Jesus instead of the box. And they were like, oh no, we got to get the box, so
There's a reason why I can hardly get any churches to book me anymore, because I'm trying to fix the system too. And there's a price that you pay, which is part of the system that we've created, which is why people like, if I admit my luggage, I'm out. I'm no longer out. But the truth is, you're really in at that point, because God's like, way to go. I'm going to take care of you. I'm going to support you. And that whole thing with that leadership, Mike, that's what you talk about in your book about. That's what groomers do. And you talk a lot. Can you tag into it really quick? Like when someone first comes and everyone's like, oh, how are you doing? They invite them over and they get all excited about them. And then the moment they're in leadership, the moment they're in the church, everything changes. Can you describe that the way you described it in your book? Because it was so
Well,
good.
yeah, well, I mean, it goes back to when I was working with that newspaper in Boston. I was selling subscriptions to them on the Cape, and they loved me because I was this cute 14-year-old kid that could talk. And so I'd knock on doors. I wasn't afraid of people. I just had this personality I have now. Then, I mean, can you imagine that? I was nuts, right? And I sold papers. I got the job done. And so they were like, oh, he's great. And I loved it because they gave me all the attention. They gave me extra money. they put me up in front of everybody and said, this is the way you do it. And but as soon as I got involved in their leadership, then they changed the tune. Now they wanted stuff from me. And that's what the church does. That's what that girl said. I was sitting there at the church just 2 days ago. She said that to me. As soon as I got into leadership, it all changed because the expectations came now. Now it's like, okay, we love you, but here's the string. There's a string now. We do love you. Yeah, we still love you, but now you got to produce. We can't just love you for being you. We got to love you for producing. And so you need to produce. And that's exactly, I was just one of those guys I went with that because I could produce. Because I'm gregarious and I'm funny and I have a brain in my head. So, and you put me on stage, I'm good. So they loved me. Right. And I fed right into that and got into it myself until I started realizing that this is poison. This is just
the
poison.
system. That's the box.
Yeah.
Well, I guess one thing is, Steve, I don't think you're fighting to change the system. I don't think any of us are fighting to change the system. I think we're fighting to call the system out for what it is. And
it's changing already. It's
maybe
already changing.
Yeah, maybe help people find a new way, because I think
La 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 la. I'm not listening, but it is changing, and you're not going to avoid that. You're exactly right. It is changing, right?
Yeah.
What is it changing into? Well, that's what we're talking about.
Right. Exactly. So,
all right. Well, this has been great. Hey, audience, we're going to keep you updated on Steve's progress on his book. I'm on him about that stuff, but
it's gonna take some time. I got a lot of stuff in here I'm writing, but we're moving forward on the regular. We're moving
Steve,
forward.
So just so you know, audience, we are going to be. I'm helping Steve also with his social media stuff, and we're going to start putting out quotes from the book, and we'll put them on here too. But we also, Steve, how can we? What's your website?
Stevohayes.com.
Stevohayes.
Stevo, Stevo Hayes, HAYS.com.
He's going to be putting regular updates on there and putting out some social media. What's your Instagram handle?
Well, here's an easier one to remember. If you search happylife.studio or happylife.lol, those websites, and if you go there, that's the same website.
Okay.
And then you can get all the stuff there. But if you search Happy Life Studios on any platform, IG, Facebook, X, or whatever, LinkedIn, if you search Happy Life Studios, you're going to find me. See that little guy behind me there, that green dude? That's kind of our logo, the lime green smiley face. And so you'll find us if you search. But I would love your input. I would love you to, even if you DM me or comment or even share the stuff that we put out there. But that's one reason why I started Happy Life Studios in the first place, because I want to reach the people that the church has forgotten about, that these people that call themselves Christians have forgotten about. So it's the same reason why Mike has gone into schools to speak in schools, because we just want to bypass the system. We just want to go directly to the people that need the love, that need the hope, that need the support, that need to hear, you're going to make it, you're okay, we're all broke, kind of a thing. So yeah.
Awesome. All right. Thanks, Steve. Brian,
thanks for having me.
Brian's heading out to Colorado to go skiing.
I'm heading downstairs.
I'm heading out to walk my dog.
We're all heading somewhere, man.
What's that, Brian?
We're all going somewhere.
We're all going somewhere. That's the truth. Remember that. You are listening. We're all going somewhere. You are going somewhere.
All right. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next week. All right. Bless you. Bye.